roll, please.
Town of Hancock.
Here.
Town of Fremont.
Here.
Town of Delaware.
Present.
Town of Coshocton. Town of Tustin.
Here.
Town of Highland.
Here.
Town of Lumberland. Town of Deer Park.
Here.
Damascus Township.
Here.
Berlin Township.
Here.
Lackawaxen Township. Shahola Township.
Here.
Westfall Township. State of New York.
Here.
Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. Delaware River Basin Commission.
Here.
National Park Service.
Here.
Thank you. Mr. Murphy from the New York City is late. Just track of that. So we're gonna move ahead, and when Mr. Murphy comes in, he's comfortable, we'll switch to his presentation.
Is he on his way, Ethan?
We haven't heard from him, so we have every reason to believe he is, but he may be somewhere without cell service.
Around here?
It's possible.
It could happen.
We didn't have one of those country cows there alongside her.
They're walking around.
He should.
Okay, next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from the May 2nd, 2013. Okay, is there any discussion on approving the minutes? Hearing none, we'll call for a vote. Aye. Motion is carried. From the public, is there any comment on the agenda items? Hearing none, we'll move into committee reports, water use, and resource management. Al?
Thank you, Sharon. The Water Use Resource Management Committee held its monthly meeting on Tuesday, May 21st. The meeting was called to order by Vice Chair Al Henry at 7:08. And minutes of the past meeting were approved, and there was no public comment on the agenda. Old business, there was a National Park Service River Safety Meeting on 4/19, which Lori Ramey attended. It was coordinated by the National Park Service. It's basically in preparation to kick off the season, and reviewed some of the concerns from last year. Also noteworthy is that Barb Perry, the assistant to the National Park Service Law Enforcement Division, has retired from the Park Service. She had a going away party on June 1st at Willock Springs, and so she's no longer with the National Park Service, to the best of my knowledge. Is that correct, Sean?
That's correct.
Okay, there was some discrepancy on the number of days, but I'm pretty sure she's passed, right?
Yep.
Upper Delaware Scenic Byway 422 meeting update. Note of interest, election of officers took place, and Nadia Raj from the town of Lumberland will be the new chairperson. Ed Boyer, town of Tustin, is the vice chair, and Larry Richardson of town of Coshocton is secretary treasurer. There will be, well, there've been several meetings about funding for the visitor center, and that discussion continues. Lori noted that there was a $1,000 donation to UDC from the byway, and that has been presented to the council. And Hancock has opened their new, on June 1st, they actually opened their new Hancock Fitness Trail and the Scenic Overlook. And Dean Smith is still getting ready to take a road tour, check signage, is that correct, or has that been done?
That happened.
Okay, that was good. The next meeting on the byway will be Monday, June 24th, 2013, due to a conflict Memorial Day. The D&H Transportation Heritage Council report was given, and one thing that was mentioned there was that Dot Moon from the National Park Service will also be retiring unless there's a change at the end of July, correct? Okay. New York State DEC letter on American eel draft addendum. It was basically the letter follow-up from Bill Rudge, and basically the council supported New York State DEC's supportive status quo option of the alternatives presented. Common Waters Natural Economies Conference Report. The highlight here was that Dr. Jerry Kaufman was the keynote speaker, and probably one of the most interesting highlights from that talk was that he sets the value of the Delaware River Basin at $25 billion annually from the headwaters to the shipping yards at the mouth of the river. So you can find out more information about there. There were some questions from the Worm Committee. John McKay questioned if Mr. Kaufman's estimate of $25 billion value broke out what part was recreation and tourism. So I don't know if that's ever been finalized, but I think that there was an option.
It can be done.
It can be, okay, but it has not been done. And there was discussion about Mr. Murphy, who's gonna be here tonight, hopefully. New business, the review of the 2014 work plan. We recommended work plan in committee, and it passed unanimously to go to the full council. Joint Interstate Bridge Commission 514 meeting. I'm not gonna spend too much time on this because they're either closed or they're open. Skinner's is open, Narrowsburg is open, and there was a report on the news tonight that it's gonna go to single lane. They were working on it yesterday, but I didn't see anybody on it today. Both lanes are open. But,
They were earlier and then it
Oh,
started
really?
raining.
oh, okay. Anyway, the scuttlebutt is gonna go down to single lane still and stay like that. At least the report tonight said until 2016. I had heard it was 2015, but whatever. Deputy Delaware River Master on 521, Travis Odell from the council. Al Henry, I and Andy Boyer traveled to Milford to meet with Maurice Stewart, the Deputy Delaware River Master. And the long and the short, if you want any more information on it, you could read that quick blurb. We were kind of amazed that she's an army of one, and I know it was kind of interesting from Andy's perspective. I can speak from quickly, but he thought that there was gonna be a big control room and you know, all these people working there like a James Bond movie, and you got in there and the only thing that was there was maybe a 19-inch Dell computer with one person. And, he was kind of dismayed because he wanted to go pull those switches for that release. But anyhow.
Most of her calculations were done here.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
If you want more, check with Andy. We all took notes, but there's more information in there. The other thing that was brought up is she had recommended that Mark Hartle of the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission be the contact person, and he seems to be the chair, currently the chair of the subcommittee on ecological flows for the RBC. So he's the go-to guy if we want further information. Delaware River flow and storage data packets are in there. Actually, it was interesting because there was 5 inches of rain up in the Delhi, Walton area. And we didn't get any of it, but it was kind of amazing because the river just went up. I believe it was coming over the spillway on the Cannonsville.
I think Walton got 5 inches.
Walton, okay. But there was like a huge slug of rain up there and
Yeah, we got very little.
very little down here. Delaware, okay, we talked about that. Other press release from Bill Rudge from New York State DEC about the Emerald Ash boring being confirmed in Delaware and Otsego counties. Gotta make sure I get that right. There's information relative to that. And that's basically it. There was no public comment. We adjourned the meeting at 7:45. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Point of order? Yes, just on the agenda, we were to have a presentation by Mr. Murphy, and then after that was going to be public comment. And I think there are people here who intended to hear what Mr. Murphy had to say and would have some questions for him under public comment. But we've passed over public comment. I just want to have another bite at that apple after Mr. Murphy comes.
We did ask for public comment.
On the agenda.
Yes,
Yeah.
on the agenda, and he's on the agenda, but it was the public comment was supposed to be after Mr. Murphy.
Right, I understand what you're saying.
There's
Okay.
2 public comments.
Yeah.
No. I'd like, after Mr. Murphy, the opportunity for public comment on the agenda because the agenda order has been shifted. You know what I'm saying?
It's official.
I hear what you're saying.
Cindy just called his cell phone, what happened?
Well, I think he said he's on his way. I got him and
You couldn't
I
understand it,
couldn't
or?
understand him, but I think he said he's on his
He
way.
could be only a mile away then.
Well, no, I think. I got a half hour out of the conversation too, but I'm not sure. It was really,
We're gonna try to move this along as rapidly as we can so we can accommodate him, and I'm certain there will be lots of.
You want a question and answer after his presentation?
That, exactly.
He's expecting that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
that's-
will that be all
give
right?
me.
I'll second it.
Third.
Okay, Hal's gonna handle the operations report from May the 28th.
All right, the operations committee met on May 28th. It started at 6:38. Minutes were approved. Executive Director's report. Lori reported the payment to cover the April expenses were credited to our account on April 24th. She said the budget is in good shape for the rest of the fiscal year 2013, and noted that there may be a surplus with which to address some more office building projects. The fiscal year 2014 will be addressed under new business. She also reported that she was notified by 2 certified letters, May 3rd and 24th, at the retail establishment on 225 Bridge Street in Harrisburg, which is a building that houses the Chinese King restaurant, which is adjacent to our parking lot here. Applicants plan to open an educational toy, models, and craft shop. She noticed our concern is the impact on our private parking lot. The application was presented to the Town of Tustin Planning Board on the 20th of May, and a public hearing has been scheduled for June 17th at 7:15 in the hall. No site plan has been made available. There is a lot of concerns with the parking lot being used by people. They probably don't know, and if they do know, they don't care. They just park there and go in and have some Chinese food, and it takes away from it. And it also could cause problems by people just parking in our lot. God forbid an accident or something happens, then we're involved in the whole situation. Ramey provided staff anniversary dates for personal evaluation purposes. The executive director, June 9th. We have the secretary for August 29th, and the resource specialist on October 13th. She also noted that Westfall Township has not had an appointed sitting UDC representative since November of 2012, after the resignation of Alex Senya. I think he moved from the area. But the alternative representative, there hasn't been any since December of '09. And that goes way back. So now we have a situation where we're wrestling with that. The UDC does give these towns that are supposed to participate X amount of dollars, and we're concerned that they should be represented. We'd like to have them represented. I'll make this brief. Ramey noted that we're waiting to hear of the decision by Norcross Wildlife Foundation in regards to our application for a grant to purchase computer and audiovisual equipment. The decision is expected in late May. I don't know if we've heard anything as of yet.
We heard,
Oh.
not heard.
Okay, well, then,
Rejected.
a decision is expected to be made in late May, and she suggested that if the grant is not awarded, perhaps the equipment could still be purchased with the surplus that is anticipated at the end of the fiscal year. So that's still maybe on the fire here. New business. Ramey noted that there are 2 draft budgets were sent out in advance, along with an explanation of the differences between the 2 spending plans. One scenario being full funding, and one which reflects a federal sequestration cut of 10%. It ends up, Sean McGinnis noted that a cut to the budget would most likely be 5% range, and suggested the council may not want to have to modify a cooperative agreement right in the middle of the year. Motion to go in executive session took place at 8:02. We come out of that, and a motion was to present a full funding budget to the council for approval, and to have a 5% reduction ready in case it's needed. The small conference room window
Richardson said it was his suggestion to try to dress up the appearance of the office by installing vertical blinds in that window. Cindy Odell said she contacted Dan Wagner, the individual who holds the office cleaning contract, and requested a price for cleaning. Let's see, we went through the summary of bills under old business. I'm gonna skip down to strides across the Delaware. Travis said that letters have been sent to the Equinox Fire Department, Damascus Ambulance, New York State Troopers, National Park Service asking for help with traffic control the day of the event. We received confirmation from the troopers that they will be there on that day. That's the New York State Troopers. The race application and online registration has been finalized. The sponsorship pledge forms for the event are being worked on. Mr. Odell hopes that the members will promote the event to their friends and family. The next step is to secure road permits. He asked members to think about the race day and hopefully come out and volunteer to help. So that was it. There was no other business that went on. There was no public, so there was no comment, and we adjourned. Thank you.
Project review. Larry?
I will, thank you. As we noted from this operations report, he didn't say what time his meeting ended. So the project review committee started rather late, but we did meet on Tuesday, May 28th. And under substantial conformance discussion items, under Town of Hancock, Travis Odell reported that he has scheduled a meeting with Delaware County Chief Planner Shelley Johnson Bennett, who worked closely with the Town of Hancock Planning Board to go over the substantial conformance checklist. Under Town of Delaware, Odell said that the town's 2006 zoning law and the current proposed amendments were reviewed according to the principles and objectives as described in the project review workbook. Under new business, a letter to the National Park Service with the council's recommendation is listed. The project review update, the Upper Delaware bridges. Odell reported that several of the Upper Delaware bridges are slated for further repairs and construction in the near future. Most noticeably is the Narrowsburg Bridge, which is expected to begin by mid-June and anticipated to remain a one-lane bridge until 2015. Construction of the replacement for the Pondeni Bridge is anticipated to take place during the construction seasons in 2014 and 15. Town of Deer Park, Travis Odell said that on May 13th, UDC received the Hawk's Nest Cafe rebuilding plans from the project engineer John Fuller, stating that this project is before the town's planning board. The site plan is unchanged from 2010. Comment letter on the project was submitted to the town planning board from the UDC on May 6, 2010, with comments in regards to the septic area, the parking, the lighting, and the design of the new structure. The Deer Park Village Incorporated proposes to develop 243-acre parcel into 1,518 unit planned residential community. The parcel is located on Wilson Road, and the site is located in the planned residential retirement district. Odell noted that part of the Wilson Road is in the corridor. Supplemental draft environmental impact statement describes a cluster building layout as its main subject and also includes a description of a conventional subdivision layout in the alternatives section. Odell spoke with the planning board chairman, Alan Schock, about both of these projects and will arrange a meeting in the future to discuss the role of the UDC in cooperation with the planning board. Lackawaxen, Odell noted that the Pennsylvania DEP District Mining Manager, Michael Mangini, has all the information and bonding for the Holbert Quarry permit and therefore would like to schedule a meeting with the National Park Service and the Upper Delaware Council at the site to go over the permit and site requirements per our last meeting, which was on September 20th, 2012, and the tentative dates for the meeting are June 20th, 21st, or July 2nd. Pennsylvania DEP, Odell said that in regards to the draft sewage facilities planning module review for on-site sewage systems proposed in high-quality and exceptional value watersheds, there is now legislation making its way through the Pennsylvania House of Representatives that could render the new rules moot. Odell reminded members that the deadline for the project completion for TAG grants is July 26, 2013, and that date is definitive. Training, Odell reported he has been participating in the Climate Solutions University Model Forest Policy Program as part of a team from the Common Waters Partnership. Under new business, the project review draft for year 2014 work plan was discussed and moved with a recommendation for adoption by the full council. Under Delaware, Odell said that this letter is being presented to follow a procedure from the project review workbook concerning ordinance amendments. The amendments prompted the reevaluation of substantial conformance status. The attachment to the letter shows how each principal and objective has been met. Ramey said the letter states that the UDC is acknowledging that the town of Delaware is still in substantial conformance as a result of amending their ordinance. The letter is addressed to the Park Service advising them of the council's recommendation, and the town is copied on it. Draft letter to the UDC towns and townships dealing with open space, and this letter is a result of a discussion that took place last month about the UDC creating a list of significant areas that would be appropriate for acquisition on a willing seller, willing buyer basis should funds become available. It was decided that a request should go to the participating towns to ask if they have such river areas identified in their towns. The idea behind the memo is to create an inventory of information and nothing more. Not surprising, the 1988 project review workbook discussion was postponed again. There was no other old business, there was no public comment, and we adjourned at 9:33.
Any comment? Question? Okay, thank you. We've been waiting almost 30 years to have Thomas Murphy or someone else come up here and talk. So what I'd like to do is change the meeting to allow him, you are ready to go?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, to allow him to start his presentation. So we don't have to wait another 30 years.
It'll be somebody else.
Somebody else?
It won't be me.
I may
Thanks
not
for
make it
inviting
either.
me, sorry I'm
Set a
so
better
late.
direction.
It took longer than MapQuest told me to start. Anyway, I've been asked to come up and give a presentation basically on how we operate, specifically in the Delaware River. I have some information on some of the rest of our system in here, but the focus is primarily on the Delaware system. So what I'd like to cover is a little of the history behind our system, what our consumption has been, where we are today, how we operate the system. We have a new tool that we call OST, the Operations Support Tool. We're working on and planning some significant new infrastructure, and you don't have to wait till the end. If you have a question, you can ask questions at any time. So, on July 4th in 1842, New York City opened up the Croton Aqueduct. And
Yeah, it was a rainy day.
And it wasn't long after that we realized, that's not going to be enough. So with that, we started to investigate other sources of water, as far as the Adirondacks, Ramapo in New Jersey, the Catskills, Connecticut and Maine, and out in Long Island as well. This map is actually from the I think 1903 report. It's on the next page. This report right here, outlining what the problem was to provide an abundant source of water for the city, with the qualities of water that you would want in good drinking water, free from pathogenic organisms, agreeable appearance, odor, taste, not too hard, should be cool, and of an equable temperature. So,
Anything else?
that's enough, that's a lot. Yeah, right. While we were doing this, there was the Water Supply Act of 1905, and at the same time, that's when we created the Board of Water Supply to help develop the overall system. One of the things that the Water Supply Act did is in allowing us to create infrastructure, take land in communities, any municipality in a county that has city infrastructure is allowed to tap into our system. And we have, upwards of 1 million people outside of the city that take our water. This is a map here of, and you can,
I was just gonna.
well, we see it as our water.
What's left over is our
Our
water.
That's left over.
Anyway, so that went through all the counties except for Dutchess County. And also to allow for fishing and boating. Just an overview of our system. It's primarily a surface water supply system. We do have some wells in Queens. Not a lot of yield, and would require a lot of treatment. We have 19 reservoirs, 3 controlled lakes. When the system is full, it's 580 billion gallons of water. We serve 9 million people. 1 million of those people are outside of the city. That's half the population of New York State. We deliver to the city about 1.1 billion gallons a day of water. To the outside communities, it's about 125 MGD. The source of water is 2,000, it's right here. It's, well, no, it's up a little bit farther. 2,000 square miles of watershed, and my bureau operates and maintains that system. This is an interesting graph. This shows historic demand, population. It also has some wastewater, dry wastewater information in here. But just looking at the blue line, which is demand, and then the green curve, which is population, even though population has gone up, our demand has significantly gone down. When I started with the city in 1988, we were getting very close to 1.5 billion gallons of water. And we're down to, around, 1,100, 1,070 now. We're actually lower in demand than we were in the drought of the 60s. And that's through conservation, through plumbing fixtures and things of that nature.
Metering made all the difference.
Metering, well, and a lot with the, low flow toilets.
Right.
And all, it's a lot of things combined, but certainly when people see a bill related to how much they're taking and they have some control, it helps.
Was reduction of commercial use a factor?
I don't know. I don't know that there's not a lot of industry in the city.
But in the 60s there was more. That's what I understood was a factor.
Yeah, but this is more recent. But you're probably right. The big improvements started around in the mid '90s. That it really just started to drop off. So anyway, the operations of the Bureau, our tasks are, one, to at all times meet the water supply needs of the city and the outside communities, to meet release requirements and diversion requirements as well, and to maintain this system in a dependable fashion. Our objectives are to divert the best quality of water available, to try to maintain a balanced system so that the system goes down and comes up together as much as possible, and to provide for downstream habitat and flood mitigation to the extent possible without negatively impacting the water supply system. So the operational framework for the Delaware system, first there's the 1954 Supreme Court decree. There was the good faith agreement in 1982 that basically came about because obviously the 54 decree was before the drought of the 60s. In the drought of the 60s, we realized, we have to make some changes. Certainly when you go into drought, you have to make some changes. We also have New York DEC regulations, Part 671 and 672, and right now we're operating under the Decree Parties Agreement for the Flexible Flow Management Program. Just threw these in for the Catskill system, also state DEC regulations. We have a permit on our Shandaken Tunnel. We have a Speedy's permit for alum treatment. We have an interim operating protocol, which is this CSSO that we have on the Ashokan Reservoir. And there's also a snowpack void program, similar to what we have in the Delaware system as well. The Croton system, it's older. Not that the system is simpler, but we have the state regulations. There's no snowpack void. There's not that much. Doesn't hold the snow for as long as it doesn't here. So reservoir operations. These pictures here, these graphs, are actually what we monitor and operate through the control room, through our SCADA system. So this is showing this top one over on the right. That's showing the three systems that combined, Kansville, Pacton, Neversink, where their storage is. I'm not sure when these were grabbed. We're not at that time of year, and we're not at that level right now. But that's showing us in L2, and then the bottom one below that is showing the individual reservoirs. So anyway, our goal is to be full on June 1st for water supply, and to delay the drawdown for as long as we can before you hit the high demand dry season. We look to avoid spilling any reservoirs once drawdown is started, and preserve as much as we can for drought conditions. As everybody's probably aware, there's a limited amount of confidence in weather reports, weather forecasts, especially long-term. So we do operate conservatively as far as water supply goes. I mean, if you're looking out 30 days and the Weather Service says this is the water you're going to have for 30 days, you say, okay, but you know, maybe we'll get 60% of it or something. They're not quite there yet, which is understandable. It's not an easy task. So anyway, these are pictures from the three different systems, and this is just to show that they're not all the same. As much as we want to go up and down in a balanced manner, these pictures were all taken around the same time. Round out, which is in the Delaware system, the Ashokan, and in the Catskill, and then the Croton system. You can see that we were having issues at both the Catskill system and the Croton system. Delaware system tends to be our best water. When we make decisions about how we're going to move water around, number one is water quality. These others are not necessarily in order, but water quality is our top concern. We want to deliver the best quality water we can. We look at what the demand is, what our modeling tells us, the National Weather Service forecasts, any maintenance issues that we may have, and what the hydrological conditions are. As far as water quality is concerned, we look at a number of things. We look at turbidity, coliform bacteria, phytoplankton, DBP, precursors, and what drives these tends to be storm events. High winds kick up turbidity, and obviously drought conditions as well. That's a picture of Cannonsville after a storm event.
Coming out of the bottom, it's muddy coming
Yeah.
out.
So some of the operational decisions and some of the strategies, we're looking at both quantity and quality. What we can do, though, is as far as our flexibility is concerned, we can selectively withdraw from the various reservoirs. We can choose which reservoirs to draw from. We can blend our operations, and our last option is treatment. This is an example of how we would selectively withdraw. Rondout Reservoir, we can look at an elevational profile of what the water quality is, and then we can selectively withdraw from wherever the best water is. We can selectively divert by bypassing certain reservoirs. This is just a graphic showing that we have the ability to go from the Rondout Reservoir, bypass West Branch if there's an issue there, right into to Kensico. Kensico, West Branch, Rondout, those are our terminal reservoirs, and so we try to keep them as full as possible. But it depends on the season as well, but we try to keep them full and move the water closer to the city. We keep them full for a number of reasons. The water quality is better. You have more settling time with a fuller reservoir, and you also limit the amount of bank erosion from like winds would kick up waves and stir up turbidity. And it also helps to drive. This is a gravity-driven system, so you know the fuller the reservoirs are, the more head you have to drive it. Kensico Reservoir, you know, this is an example of when I said we can bypass. We can also bypass Kensico here as well. You can see this is the Delaware Aqueduct coming in. The water would flow through the reservoir from shaft 17 to 18, Catskill as well, or we can bypass with Delaware and shoot right through. So you know, treatment is for. This is a different form of treatment. This is not treatment for turbidity. Turbidity would be the alum, and that the state is very limiting in what they want us
You
to
can only
do.
use so much alum, it becomes a slime on the bottom
Right,
of the,
right. Yeah, so it's for us too, it's the
you can only use so much.
solution of last resort. But at shaft 18 on Kensico, we disinfect with chlorine. We also treat with fluoride. As I said before, we do operate the system to maintain balance between the three systems and then the individual reservoirs as much as possible. This way they go down together, and we can hopefully count on them coming up together. One of the things we look at all the time, especially as you're getting in closer to June 1st on the refill side, is the probability of refill. This one is for the Delaware system. This is just an example. What this is showing basically, if you're looking at, say, a 96% usable storage, there's a 90% chance you're going to have 96% usable storage or greater, 10% chance that you'd be less. 100%, there's a 70% chance that you'd be at 100% here. And this year, I know things turned around. Initially, it didn't quite look like we were going to get to 100%. Our OST, this is a tool that it's still in development. It should be completed by the end of this year, but there's a lot of components of it that we're using already. The one thing we're still waiting for is we've been working with the National Weather Service, and they're putting together a probabilistic forecast for us, as well as everybody else throughout the country, but we're going to be their beta site. What OST does is it takes a lot of information from a number of sources. It looks at the USGS streamflow data. There's the National Weather Service data, which we don't have yet. What we're using is the historical record. And if we're in a wet condition, we take the historical record and it's shifted to wet. The thinking being that if you're wet, you're gonna remain wet for X amount of time. And then it'll decay to, to the straight historical record. But if you're in a wet season, the program will favor wet. If you're in dry, it's gonna favor dry for the next 2 or 3 months.
How often are you looking at that, the historical, switching between the historical models, dry and wet? Because obviously we've had pretty quick changes here as recently.
But you look at it every day. If it's telling you that you've been wet for the last 3 weeks, the thinking is, well, we're going to be wet for the next 2 or 3 weeks.
It's that far back as 3 weeks. It's not a close, as far.
No, it's a bigger picture.
Okay.
It's weeks for the last couple of months. If you've been very dry, you're going to assume you're going to continue to be dry, at least for the near future. After that, there's really no skill in that assumption because things do change. But we're expecting to have to be able to put in the Weather Service forecasts into the model very shortly, which should do it should do a lot of things for us. Right now, for instance, this storm that we're having now, it's not part of a forecast that's in the model. The model's looking at 80 years of historic inflow. With the Weather Service would actually be looking at real forecasts.
Short term, yeah.
Short term and long term. They're going to go out as much as a year. Now that has limited skill. Certainly the 7 to 10 days higher skill. Then you get out to 15 days, it drops off. But it's more real world than just the history. So
when will that be?
We hope to have the whole thing completed by the end of this year, and the Weather Service tells us that they'll have their component for us, I believe in the fall, but I'm not positive of the date, but I think they're on schedule. We also take information into the model, real-time reservoir information from our SCADA system. We have real-time water quality information from the reservoirs and from various key points, and all that gets fed into our various databases. And that gets run through the model, the OASIS W2 model. The W2 is the water quality side of it. OASIS, you might be familiar with. It's the flow routing model. So we now have a model that looks at both water quality and flow, and it gives you a feeling of what you might expect. Certainly if you're looking at what your operating parameters are. It's a great model to look at different programs. Like if you're going to have a larger fisheries release program, a different CSSO, you can run that and you see what the impacts are across the board. And we also run it just for daily operational. So it has a planning mode and it has a short-term operations mode. And we are now in the process of turning over a planning tool to will eventually be turned over to all the stakeholders. Right now, DRBC has it and they're going through it to see that they're comfortable with the way it performs compared to their version of OASIS. So we still have a few issues to work out there, but hopefully we'll have that model set to go shortly. New facilities that we have coming along, there's the Delaware Catskill UV facility in Westchester County. That came online last summer. And there's the Croton filtration plant that is scheduled to start operations at the end of this year. And that'll be operated by another bureau.
So
What would that one be?
What?
Who would operate that?
Bureau of Water and Sewer Operations, BWSO. They're responsible for in-city movement, distribution. That's in the Bronx.
That, you might, maybe I'm wrong, but I'm thinking you want to be clear, that only is intended for filtration of the Croton
That's correct.
system.
No, you're absolutely right. Right.
And
Okay.
what,
That's not
what
Delaware
will
law.
what can you say about Croton going back online? I'm assuming is a significant amount of new water into the system. What effect will that have on the Delaware system releases?
It'll have an effect. To what extent? I mean, that's going to be very expensive water. That's all pumped, filtered. We intend to use it, but we're not going to run it full throttle all the time. It'll have a minimum operating quantity that it'll run at. Certainly in drought, it's going to be optimized.
Optimized means you'll be used more?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, in a drought, we'd take full advantage, because, cost isn't as significant in a drought.
So the Catskill, Delaware ultraviolet disinfection facility, even though you're using ultraviolet, you're still chlorinating the water?
Yes, to a lesser extent, we are, yes. The UV treatment plant, it's required under the L2 rule. It will provide inactivation of Cristosporidium. This facility treats better than 2 billion gallons of water a day. As I said, it went into service last August. It has 56 40 MGD UV disinfection units. They should have put a person in there so you could see the scale, but you can see the stairs. Those are big. As an engineer, I find these facilities very cool and expensive too. Another project that we've begun is interconnection between the Delaware Aqueduct and the Catskill Aqueduct at Shaft 4 on the Delaware. When the Delaware was built, they thought it might be good at some point to have the ability to do this. So we've begun that work. This will add as much as 365 MGD to the Catskill, and it increases the Delaware flow up to a little bit more than 1 billion gallons. Also, this one's not too terribly expensive compared to some of the other things. The filtration plant is it's close to $3 billion. And this is the repair work that we're looking to do on the Roundout West Branch Tunnel. This shows, it might be hard to see here, but there's the river and the bypass portion of the existing tunnel with the new shafts and everything that's going to be required there. And that's it for me. That's all my stuff.
Is any of this available online? Any of this presentation, like these, I think the historical.
I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of stuff on the city's website. I mean, I can save this on your computer if you want. Save it in a PDF form if you want.
It would be interesting to have, maybe to take back to our towns and show a little stuff that we represent.
Yeah. No,
It'd be great to have.
I can try to save that.
Send it to the council and they can get it to
Yeah,
us.
actually, I can do that too. If I can't save it on this, I can always maybe email it to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
The FAD agreement was extended till what, 2017?
Which,
The FAD agreement?
I think so, yeah, that was a 10-year FAD.
I'm missing that, what was that point?
Yes, about the duration of the FAD.
Filtration avoidance
The FAD.
determination
Oh, what you're granted.
by the EPA.
Right, based on how we operate, our ability to maintain the quality of water.
Which allows you to have unfiltrated water going into the city, and the city doesn't have to build a huge filtration plant.
Correct.
Well, it's the
Correct.
durability that's a real concern
So
with
that-
filtration.
Excuse me?
With filtration, having the need for filtration would deal with durability more so than anything else. Henceforth, the alum
Yeah,
keeps the water clear.
it keeps the water clear, but it's more than that, it's other pollutants that
Oh,
could be in there
Well,
as well.
so much stuff
I mean,
seeps.
there's a whole, watershed protection program where we spend tens of millions of dollars to avoid spending, hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, but it seems sooner or later,
Maybe.
you're gonna get to the point of no return. I mean,
It's hard to say, but, I think it's a worthwhile effort to maintain the system up here, the watershed, in as pristine a condition as you can, and avoid that as long as you can. It wouldn't change, New Jersey for one thing. Well, if you treated that, then, all the systems would be equal. They would never be equal, because there's always gonna be more problems on the Catskill side. So it would be still cheaper. The Delaware
Transportation.
water, the Delaware water would still be the best water. It wouldn't be as good as it now, but it would still be the best water and the easiest water to treat.
right.
So it really wouldn't change how,
But as they say,
quantity
in
necessary.
presentation, you mix and match now.
We do.
To elevate certain
Absolutely,
quality.
yeah, and that's the idea behind shaft 4, in that when Catskill is in a turbidity event, we can take better water from Delaware, mix it with the Catskill water and blend it,
Right, to increase the quality of the water.
increase quality of the water.
Mr. Mayor? First of all, I want to thank you for coming. I have a question regarding the decree parties. And, of course, one of the decree parties is the City of New York.
Right.
And I get the impression that you are the face of that decision-making.
I'm the technical advisor. My principal deputy commissioner, Paul Rush, he's the one that calls, the shots in consultation with the mayor.
That was my question, like, who is the decider from the city? Is it
It would be
the
the
mayor, the
commissioner.
city
No,
council?
it'd be the commissioner. The commissioner reports to the mayor, so it's
The commissioner is?
DEP?
DEP commissioner, Carter Strickland.
I ask it in the context of the proposal that came up, been worked on for the last year, and had to do with thermal stress release.
Okay.
Okay, and what I would evaluate and was a proposal to alleviate some of our concerns here with thermal stress. And a proposal was put forth that would alleviate thermal stress under certain conditions. It had certain protocols. It was backed by pretty immaculate science and modeling, and they.
Okay.
All right. Well, so far we haven't heard any objections to any faults or failures of the proposition, other than the fact that it was just not acted on or rejected.
Well,
It wasn't acted on. It wasn't implemented.
right.
And the
but I mean,
request was.
But we've,
The,
okay, go ahead.
the request was for a 1-year trial period, and with a huge number of stakeholders saying, we'd like this, and we believe that we can have some benefit here to our environment without negatively impacting any of the other objectives. And to this point, I haven't heard any basis or reason as to why the proposal was either not acted on or rejected or tabled or whatever happened. And maybe you could shed some light on what happened.
Well, there's a number of things that come into play here. One is we do have a means to make thermal releases. We've done this for a while. New York State, when Dr. Muraladar was around, we put together programs, and since then we still put together a program to make water available for a thermal release under certain conditions. Now, those are special programs. They're outside of the agreement. We as the city have never felt that there's enough water or it's appropriate for us to try to thermally maintain the main stem.
Well, you couldn't tell by the flows sometimes.
The beaver kill, it's, that's a big source of very warm water at times. So there's that, is that we never felt that it made sense to take on maintaining the main stem. And we've made that clear more than once. The other thing is it's not our water. It's not solely our water. This water would come from the ERQ, which is primarily intended for the other basin states, especially the lower basin. So, and they have issues that they want water available for. So it's not that you just have to sell it to me, it has to be sold to everybody. It's not, the city isn't the one that's calling the shots here. We have a say, but it's not up to us whether we are going to do this. And that's, I was just trying to explain what our thinking is that the main stem is too heavy a lift.
Well, but didn't the Lordville thermal stress release protocol program that was presented many times down in Trenton, I think 3 times at least,
Okay.
Didn't it try to answer and say, well, these are the numbers and this is how it would work, and so far
Well, yeah, I mean, but it was, I forget the exact numbers, but it was either 4,000 CFS days or 6,000 CFS days a year, which is a significant piece of water that is available in the ERQ. So,
but didn't the program also show that water would otherwise have been quote unquote wasted?
No.
No?
It could be wasted in, the viewpoint of the people that are promoting that program, but to the down basin, for instance, 2010, we were fine, down basin went into drought. So all that water became available to them. So we released, I think, close to the entire amount in the IERQ for the lower basin for that circumstance. So, I mean, they have other concerns. That's not something that happens very often, fortunately. But there are other issues.
I believe, wasn't that when Lee came through, was it?
No, it's 2010.
Because when Lee came through, the Cannonsville was down about 60%. And one of the main reasons there was no flooding downstream.
No, it wasn't 60%. It was almost right on the CSO curve. I mean, the 3 reservoirs were positioned right where they were supposed to be.
Cannonsville was real low, the East Branch was running super high, and the West Branch hardly any water.
You're right. Cannonsville was lower, but the other reservoirs were right there. It was at the end of the year, so you're right. Cannonsville had been drawn down significantly more than the others, and the others were hugging that CSSO line. And when
Well, needless to say, there was enough room in the reservoir that it didn't cause the main stem to flood.
Right. And we can do that with one storm. It's the 1-2 punch that we have a harder time, because then,
Well, that was
Irene
Lee.
filled it, and then Lee comes along and we spilled. And even when we spilled, you know, you can still see the attenuation effect of the reservoirs. Not so much with Neversink, because it's smaller, but certainly with the Pacton and Kansas. Even though they're spilling, you know, there's more water going into the reservoirs
Then coming in.
than it's coming out. So it still provides benefit, but it's really hard to deal with a 1-2 punch. You get back-to-back tropical storms. You
But
know.
I live on the river,
Okay.
so the up in Hancock. So I notice, I see the river every day. And when I saw the West Branch, it was running normal. And it was pouring out, but it was running normal. The East Branch, you wouldn't want to even go near the East Branch, it was that mean. But it was
East Branch
because of the
took it
void
too.
in the
But-
Cannonsville.
But the Pacton took it too.
Well, but Pacton must have been overflowing, because I know it was
It
considerably
spilled, but I
higher.
I don't think it spilled or didn't spill much until Lee came. Then
Yeah,
they spilled.
right,
Yeah, then Canonsville spilled too.
right, but that void saved a lot,
Right,
because it allowed that water to build up, not be passed off downstream.
so you'll help me tell everybody that the program
Well,
works.
it's like the DRBC, they said they did a study on the 04, 05, 06 flood. Avoiding the reservoir would only mean maybe 4 feet difference, but that's 4 feet is the difference
Well, no, it
between,
depends on where you are.
Right, but
That 4 feet, it's
that
like
4
1
feet is the
foot.
difference between $10 million or tens of $millions of damage and hundreds of millions of dollars in damage.
Yeah, again, it depends on where you are on the river.
Well, down by me, you could see it, the river just came right up. I mean, everything was
I think there's
receding.
I think there's a 1 foot difference at trend.
Well, the further up, closer you are, the more effective.
They also ran with no reservoirs. They ran with empty reservoirs, they ran with full reservoirs, they ran with 10% void, 20% void, and no reservoirs. And the worst was in reservoirs.
Well, the point is, those few feet make a huge difference monetarily to people.
The Cannonsville hydroelectric project,
Yeah.
just wanted to find out, there's not gonna be any difference in releases?
No, it's exactly whatever the agreements are between the degree parties. So we're not,
capturing, we're taking advantage of those releases.
we're just taking advantage of the releases. The hydro isn't gonna make the decisions to, you know, prices are high, let's move more water. The prices are not very high, let's hold on to the water. It's gonna be in this case, it's the FFMP agreement. And that's what the generators are sized for.
Hey, Tom, can we, back to the thermal release thing for a moment, when Andy was talking about the work that I think you've seen
Yeah.
with Friends of the Upper Delaware River and part of all that. It seems to me that, I mean, the way we look at the fishery and the needs there, it's my understanding that research, and the goal for us is to, if possible, to figure out a way to have more steady, you know, consistent temperatures that support fishery and habitat. And I think part of that research, I thought my understanding was that proposed a way that we could do that through release management and not, you know, get you guys all concerned about your primary needs, that we could do both of these things and maintain certain temperatures at certain times of year to Wardville. I mean, that's a goal here, and based on as I learn more about this, I wonder whether that's far, in your mind, whether that's far from possible, whether that's very doable, because right now it seems like the thermal component under the current management regime, it's kind of like you get it, sometimes you get it and sometimes you don't, and sometimes you'll say it's not there and sometimes it is there, and
Right.
it's sort of hit or miss, and sometimes it's a lot and sometimes it's nothing. The goal to me, it seems like, can we have a downstream environment that is not, we're sort of managing for the flooding threats, and we're managing for the ecosystem in a more holistic way that isn't subject to such radical changes, drought, deluge or drought kind of thing. Can you guys do that with your new OST and through the FFMP? And Can you guys figure that out? Is that important to you? Is that a goal for you? Is it doable?
If I understand, no. In essence.
The simple answer.
The simple answer. No, I don't mean to be flippant, but, managing the main stem thermally is not something we feel that we have, there's not enough water to do that.
Not enough water.
We don't feel there's enough water to do that. And the water that's available, that's what I was saying before, it's not just the city's water. That IERQ water is, belongs to everybody, and it actually, we feel it belongs to the lower basin more than it does us. We're required to release it. We have a say in whether or not it gets released,
But back to that research, I have to go back and check. I thought the thinking behind that research, and I'm not sure whether you've accepted that, is
yeah. All I'm saying no to is, thermal management of the main stem. No, that is not a goal of ours. So just to be clear, so that.
But an ancillary topic that someone mentioned, New York City DEP and who makes the decisions. We had Friends of the Upper Delaware River had a meeting in Hancock last week or 2 weeks ago where Carter Strickland was there.
Oh, that meeting, okay.
Right, Carter Strickland was there.
Right.
And he was there for the express purpose of hearing out, listening to, in this case, the business operations in the area. And folks like Bart and others came and talked about, how important it is that, we maintain the river in as pristine a way as possible because it is such a resource for the area. So, the DEP commissioner came to Hancock to hear those concerns. And it's not clear to me kind of, the outcome of that meeting, I'm not sure was as satisfactory as it could be in terms of, it wasn't clear to me at the end of that meeting whether New York City, what your investment is downstream, down through the main stem and down in the upper Delaware region. But your boss was in Hancock.
No, our objective is to not hold on to water that we don't need, and that's what OST does for us.
So are you waiting for OST to become more fully?
No. As I said, that's not solely our water. We don't make that call by ourselves.
But
I said, we're currently not in favor of managing the main stem, but.
I read the proposal, and it seemed to me, as I'm not a scientist, but it seemed to me it was all spelled out that there was enough water for modest thermal assistance. And there's an example, which is the Lackawaxen, which developed the exact same type of program, and it's working marvelously. Okay, so
they're not water supply. They're a power generator.
They're a power generator, but their water is valuable to them too because it's dollars. But the amount that's necessary in thermal events is so minuscule that it's de minimis. It doesn't make any difference. And I think that's what the science that's been presented to you time and time again is showing. So is the city neutral? Is it negative? Or is it up to the other
well, it's up to
players?
For us to do anything, all the decree parties have to agree.
It's unanimous.
It's unanimous. There was a question somebody sent about, what's the votes? Elaine Reichart, the transparency on voting. There really is no vote. It's a negotiation. You either are going to all agree that we're going to do something, or if you don't agree, then you don't do it. It's not majority rule.
Do you think if the down basin decree party members agreed that the thermal protection plan was doable, that the city would go along?
I think there would be a fair chance that we would. Again, as I say, we don't see the ERQ water as ours. I mean, our intent is to give that away. How it's done, everybody has to agree to.
Right.
But our intent is we're going to give that water away. But there are other issues other than just the fish. As it is now,
Well, we're not just talking about the fish,
okay,
it's the
but
whole economic
out
impact
of
the whole area.
the IERQ or ERQ, depending on how you're looking at it, there's 6,000 CFS days of water that are going into the tables. So they've already.
Can you define CFS day first for us?
Cubic feet per second per day.
So 6,000 total cubic feet per second per day across all
Right,
the
it's
systems, or
it's
just?
about 4 billion gallons of water.
Okay. And
Yeah,
is
if you
that
convert
fall
that
on
to MGD.
all three? Oh yeah, all three reservoirs we're talking about, or just Cannonsville release?
No, it's the aggregate.
Okay.
It's to be released, so.
Of the Delaware system.
From the Delaware system, yeah, so out of the water that's available in the IERQ, 6,000 CFS days is already in the table. So if you want another 6,000 and another, or 4, depending on what the program would call for, you have to convince them that, they can afford to give away that much more. They feel, and rightly so, they've already contributed to the fisheries. Those are in for fisheries releases. Those are in the level 2 releases.
I'm still confused, because I thought that the modeling that we were talking about, the work that was done on the thermal component, it was my understanding that it didn't have to even dip into IERQ. Now,
Sure it did.
Maybe I'm.
Yeah, no, that's where the water would come from, yeah. It's gotta come from someplace. That's where it would come from.
But I find when you have the releases from Wallenpaupack, that the upper basin becomes drought stricken. Because New York City, a lot of times, throttles back on the releases from the Cannonsville and Papacton.
The river
because-
master.
Because,
The river master does, yeah.
because Wallenpaupack is meeting this,
We're
helping to meet.
We're still making the releases that are in the agreement, the FFMP releases. Those
But-
get made all the time.
But you might just as well call it a drought.
No way.
On the mainstream,
Right.
oh, I've seen 700
Depends on what-
CFSs trickling down.
Depends on what table you're on. If you're in a drought, then yeah, you're gonna see
No,
releases.
not in
But
a
if you're in
drought. That was the
good
problem.
conditions, you're gonna see the normal FFMP releases. What the river master is calling for are the Montague releases, that we have to make up any deficits of 1750 CFS
Right.
is met at Montague. So if water is coming in like now, he's not gonna call, because we have plenty of rain, or Wallenpaupack is
You're gonna throttle
releasing.
back the releases to bare
Well,
minimum.
because we don't have to make up a deficit. There's no deficit for us to make up.
It's true, but there's a deficit between the reservoir and the lack of waxing.
And, those release tables are designed on the fisheries white paper.
Well,
White paper.
It
So,
may be,
When
but
conditions
there's,
are good.
when you're on the river and see the
releases-
river every day like I do, you notice things. It's not a piece of paper, it's real. And there's certain markers you see every day, and you watch them, and you can tell the health of the whole river, just by those markers.
Jim, did you get that? I know you had your hand up.
I answered, you answered my question about if New York would go along.
forget.
Hey, Tom, just to echo what you're saying, is that, downstream, there are downstream flow targets that are met. I mean, there are pollution loadings that are designed, that those flows have to be there, or else there's going to be, water pollution problems. There's issues about salinity intrusion, affecting the city of Philadelphia, as well as New Jersey water supplies. There's oyster interests in terms of the amount, the actual salinity on the spawning oyster beds. So there's all these other interests that occur, down basin.
You put some meat on the bones of what those interests are. But yeah,
Right.
there are other concerns other than the fisheries.
I have to say,
throughout the base.
it's not just about the fisheries, it's about the whole economy of the upper Delaware. I mean,
Ecology.
if people are in town fishing or kayaking or doing whatever on the river, they're spending money in the town that they're in visiting. They're not gonna come and stay there if there's no water.
Yeah, that's right. What a dichotomy.
Yeah, so my question about I absolutely understand that there are things that people want to use the IERQ for. My question is there any data, like over the past 10 years, with regard to IERQ, of how much of it was actually used for those things, and how much maybe wasn't used for anything?
The river master tracks that.
Because that, it seems to me, would be the point that you wanted to get at. And if you found out that in fact, even though people felt like they needed all that water, a lot of it hasn't been used, then some of it might be available for thermal release.
Tom, Tom, is IERQ water like vacation pay? It doesn't roll over into the next year?
Right. It reboots the next year, as long as it's not in the drought. In the drought, it goes away. But yeah, it renews every year.
So we don't get, it doesn't get saved up and we can go back and say, hey, you didn't use that, we still got it.
Right, but if you used half of it, June 1st or June 15th, you have the full.
When was the last recorded drought?
2002.
Back to the weather, just real quick. We had, 5 inches of rain up in Walton the other day. I understand that you guys are working with NWS and know to try to get that into the OST. Is there any plan in the short term to say, just someone look at the radar and say, hey, we're getting hammered, 275 release, this is for the flood people, obviously, 275 release, we're in 4A still, we're obviously gonna fill. We're gonna hit that 100% mark. Why did it take, a week and a half to bump this up to the 4G, to the top table, when you have, I forget what the million gallon days are for the refill? Is there anything that's gonna be in place or that you guys can do to make that happen on a more timely manner?
It's a good question. The issue is, yes, if we see water coming and there's a fair amount of confidence that it's gonna come, we're low, we're on the low table, that we can bounce up. We did that this week.
Yep, I said, again, it was like 14 days or
No,
so.
we were up to 4G yesterday. We accelerated.
And was it supposed to happen the first, I don't know the answer to this, does it happen the first, or what is it? Is it on a monthly basis that they decide which chart we're gonna be?
Oh, no, we run the model.
That's why you keep it.
Maybe not daily, but a couple of times a week.
So we were at 100% for well over a week before we moved up in that chart. That's my confusion, why, if we're already filled, it's gonna show refills still coming in, why not bump that up sooner? Why do that?
Well, June 1st was the date that we looked to be full on. Right. We were full.
Yep.
103%.
And I don't think quite that high.
Yeah. Well, it is.
And depending on
May 31st.
overall, it's around 100.7, the three combined. So, yeah, we would look at it and move it up. The problem with moving it up really fast, if there's a storm, is are you gonna make something worse farther downstream?
If you look at, but you're talking between 200 CFS and only adding another 600 based on where we are date-wise and based on the capacity. That's really not gonna, 600 CFS isn't gonna create a major issue downstream, as opposed to, just in general, it's not gonna hurt. I was just curious.
Yeah, well, we have safety factors in there. We looked at combined, well, we look at the USGS flood stage downriver, and if it's forecasted to hit flood stage, we cut all the way back. We also look at combined spill and release, and have thresholds for cutting back the release if we're hitting that trigger. But when conditions are favorable and it shows that we can increase tables, we do it pretty quickly. I looked at it the other day, and this was about a week or so before June 1st, and it was about 77% of the time we were on the highest tables of the year, and about 4% of the time we were on the 4A table.
Yeah, the whole way.
Now, after I did that, we'd spent a few more days on the 4A table, so that number would go up, and then everything else was in the
And just one little small question, kind of off the topic. Is there an issue with the Salisbury gauge right now? Because it's saying 600 release and there was no today.
Yeah, I saw that.
There's no bump, no temperature change.
I saw that the other day. If it gets clogged, it's the reading is off.
Okay, yes, you got yours over.
I have a quick question. I'm sorry.
No, Tony, go ahead first.
I'm sorry. What's the lowest Cannonsville was ever drawn down to? I remember driving up the Stylesville back around 2001 or 2002. What was it down to?
I think it's single digits. It was down to about
When they replaced the valves.
3%.
Could you?
No, this is the drought.
What was it, please?
About 2 or 3%,
Yeah, it was 3.
yeah.
And what was the reason that it was drawn down that?
It was a drought.
And so all the water was coming from Cannonsville and not from Pacton or from Neversink, it was just drawn down all the way until September, right?
Well, everything was drawn down. I was with a different bureau at that time, so I don't know how it was managed. But I've seen the pictures of Cannonsville.
Right, you can see chimneys, you can see,
Yeah. Yeah.
Was down to about
What's the percentage of water out of the Delaware system, you often hear people talk about this, that actually leaks out of the system? Leaks out.
34 million gallons.
Well,
Let-
yeah.
let him-
Okay, percentage-wise.
In other words, if you're diverting X amount, how much does it make?
Yeah, it
to
is
West
dependent on how much you're moving through the tunnel.
Right.
So you get 34, 35 MGD if you're moving 800 MGD through the tunnel.
That just leaks out?
It leaks. All pipes leak, by the way.
That's not true.
Yeah, no, that's true.
You're an
All
engineer.
tunnels leak.
Oh, maybe,
All
well,
tunnels.
okay, but not all pipes leak. And you can fix
Eventually
them,
they
I was just curious. In other
And
words-
we're fixing this one.
Okay.
And if it's at a lesser flow, and I'm not sure what the cutoff is, it's anywhere from about 15 to 35 MGD.
So that's,
And 15, normally say we're moving 600 MGD through there, that's not a real big number.
so when you stop the leaks, there's a chance that maybe you could use some of that water for some of
There
these
you
other
go.
purposes, right?
There you go, yeah.
Excuse me, along those lines, the tap for the village of Curious Joel in Orange County, is that apt to set any kind of a precedent for future taps into the line? Are you
No, I
understanding?
mean, they have an entitlement to that based on the Water Supply Act of 1905. They're a municipality in a county.
So any growing community suburb can seek the same kind of a tap?
Oh, yeah, yeah. As I said earlier, we have just under 1 million customers, they're not our customers. That we, sell the water to the municipalities and they do the distribution. There's 1 million people.
Do they have limits on how much they can take, or do you monitor how much is used?
Well, they have an entitlement to a quantity of water. That quantity of water is based on the taking on a per capita basis for an in-city resident. A lot of towns take more than that. And there's a price structure such that for their entitlement quantity, it's, say, $1,000 per 1 million gallons. I think it's close to the right price. If they exceed that entitlement quantity, it goes up to better than $3,000 per million gallons. They're paying, at that point, they're paying the in-city rate. Before that, they're paying significantly less than a ratepayer in the city pays. And the way that's structured is we look at our overall costs and we cut it off at the city line so that the municipalities north of the city are not paying for infrastructure and overhead in the city. But once they exceed that entitlement quantity, then they pay the same rate. So we don't limit them. In a drought, we would look for them to conserve, but we don't limit them. But they're only entitled to the entitlement quantity. They're not entitled to more, but they can take it.
On a day-to-day, month-to-month, it's a juggling act, obviously, to meet everybody's needs. But with, based on averages across the board, is there a carrying capacity number that there won't be enough water for everybody?
Well,
like on your daily usage?
That's our safe, that would be a safe yield number that we quote.
Or like it's maybe $1 billion or 1 billion gallons a day?
We take 1 billion gallons a day.
Right.
Yeah.
What would be, say, 2 billion a day where
2 billion would
Montague isn't
exceed,
getting
2
met,
billion
Trenton
would
isn't getting
exceed
met?
our safe yield quantity. You know, right now we're forgetting what the numbers are, but we're running right on the edge, and that's without Croton online. We bring Croton online, you know, I think our safe yield goes up to like 1340 MGD, and we're taking say 1100. So so we're okay. And then with the outside communities, a little bit more. But that's, the safe yield is the planning tool. We don't operate through that, but we look at it, and if our demand is exceeding what our safe yield is, and the safe yield is designed to get you through in our case, it's the drought of the 60s, the most severe conditions historically. So if our demand is higher than our safe yield, we know we're going to be in trouble. So then we have to look to additional supplies, more conservation, something along those lines. And that's why, the conservation, that slide I showed you earlier, is so valuable to us, because we went from almost 1.5 billion down to 1,100.
Well, that's kind of what I'm interested in, is there's gotta be a year where you know that you're gonna need more supply, maybe another reservoir or something that projected 2050, I'm sure somebody knows that.
I'm gonna be retired.
I know, that's,
I mean, when demand exceeds supply.
Right, yeah, but the city has a,
They'll have a filtration plant by them and use the Hudson
city has a
Unlimited.
pretty good history of looking ahead and planning.
May I ask a question, not about worst case scenario, but when there's plenty of water, and you're spilling and all that, and it's July or August, you do have plenty of water. Let's say it's that scenario, not a drought scenario. And everyone is aware that 3 days of 90 degrees is coming, so we start to try to reach out to our politicians and everyone. Give us some help, give us some.
It wouldn't be an issue.
Now,
if we're spilling in July and August, we've exceeded the CSSO, and we're opening Cannonsville to 1,500 CFS.
Okay.
It would not.
I know it wouldn't be an issue, but it does
issue.
not happen. It does not happen when you request the water. It doesn't happen until you bang, and eventually it happens. It happened twice in the last year? Twice.
Well,
But we have 3 thermal events.
Yeah.
What happened to the third one,
One, and I brought this up at the RFAC meetings as well, is there's refuge. From Lordville, it's only a few miles to the confluence.
But that's not answering my question. I
No,
know
but
there's refuge.
what I'm saying is the fish are okay. The fish are okay.
Why, if the request is made for more water when there's plenty of it, why is it so hard, and why can't we get it?
Because tomorrow's always the first day of next drought.
Is that their answer?
Well, first of all, there isn't the scenario that you presented that the reservoirs are spilling in July and August. As I said, if they were, we're making very high releases anyway because we've way exceeded the CSSO. So, the valves are open full under those circumstances. There wouldn't be anything.
I'm talking about the charts that we get every single month where there are often times where the normal is here and we're way above it, and you still, during those thermal events in July and August, you still can't get a shot of water. And why is that?
Because it hasn't been approved. That's IERQ water. And that normal line has limited value. We don't track that. I know DRC has that on the graph. And that's what he's.
But that's the long-term.
Yeah, historical.
Long-term need.
Historical.
Yeah, it's not an operating level for us.
It's just what it was.
Right.
I don't know why you'd rather spill it in February than give it
We
to
don't
us in
want to
August
spill
when we need it.
We don't want to spill it.
He gave you the answer in the very
And-
beginning.
And in February.
It's our water.
It's his water, it's not our water.
Well, the
That's
water
his
that he's
answer.
asking for is not our water.
And I have a.
That's the.
None of it's
the
true.
You still
IERQ
believe
water.
it's your water, and you don't wanna give it.
Don't
Pretty
mind.
much sums it up.
Again, our philosophy is that if we don't need it, we will make it available. That's what the releases, that's what these tables are built on.
It's just not when you need it.
That what we want is, we want to be full June 1st. That's our objective. Meet demand, be full on June 1st. If the model's showing us that's happening, then we should be at the highest release table. If the model is showing us that we're not going to make June 1st without adjustments, then the tables drop down. So we're releasing everything that we don't need. This is very different than the way we used to operate. The way we used to operate, you know, we felt that there's no sustainability. If we're operating on these tables and making these huge fish releases, when the demand in the city increases and we have to now start taking more water, then we're destroying habitat that we created. We're not gonna do that. What this does is, there are 8 tables there. Everybody can see, depending on what kind of conditions there are hydrologically, you're gonna have water or you're not gonna have water. You know, so that it's not, previously we had been asked, well, you know, you're only using 600 MGD a day. You know, you don't need that, but we're gonna need it in the future. You don't need it now. So we're not gonna put ourselves in a position where we're gonna create habitat just to, you know, 50 years down the line, then destroy it. This year, with this program, it's very clear to everybody what you have. It's based on forecasted available water. If there's forecasted available water, there's higher releases. If there's not forecasted available water, there's lower releases.
There's a quick question.
It all pivots on the EPA though.
A real specific one, like, we were on 4A, you know, previous to the rise,
Right.
but 1,000 was being released, when there was really spilling out of Cannonsville, I should say. What was the thinking behind that, or that, because that number's obviously not on the chart 4A.
Okay, yeah.
I just wanted
That's
to
in
clarify.
the, you know, that's in the agreement. The reservoir was spilling, the model wasn't advising us, because, you know, the model doesn't run our system, you know, we make the decision. But, the state called, and there's provision in the agreement that allows us to transfer spilled water to, bottom release water. The state requested that, and, we released it. That's the provision that was released under. And, you know, for us, you know, we feel very strongly in whatever the parameters of the agreement are, we're gonna operate in that manner. We're not gonna, on our own, decide to release more or release less. But there is a provision, if the reservoirs are spilling, that the state can request that we transfer the spill to release.
Is it advantageous for you guys to let it spill over the top versus using that sort of system all the time? Or is it for turbidity or anything, or is that?
No, I mean,
negative sum kind
the
of deal?
water's gonna go down
Either way.
downriver anyway. The only thing you wanna be careful with there is just make sure you don't trip those triggers where you have a combined spill release that's higher than we should be making.
That's a great answer, and that's one of the things that we've always had issues with the DEP, from mine as a business owner, the transparency. Perfect question, perfect answer, we know what's going on. Is there anything in the pipeline to get us a little bit better, more transparency as to why these decisions are made? Because I'm getting 100 angry phone calls a day, you know, the typical thing from anglers and non-anglers alike. And it's this big
The agreement is
man behind the curtain kind of a scenario.
No, I mean, it's in the agreement. We post the tables that we're gonna be releasing on.
Then we get the days like that though, where there's 1,000, where you guys switch up and come through. I didn't know about that.
Okay.
Where can we find those sort of, that part of the agreement, I should say?
Well, it's written in there, but it would be hard to know when it's gonna happen. I mean, we get a phone call, we have a request. It was last Friday, actually. I was out of the office and I saw it on my BlackBerry that the state asked for it, and somebody in the office said sure, so we released it. So that would happen too fast. I don't know how we would know about that. But we put out the summary page generally we put it out once a month, but generally the middle of the month, unless we make table changes. If we make a table change, then we would post a supplemental summary page. And the summary page tells you what we see as inflow over the long term. If it's in the winter and there's snowpack, it'll show you, what's there to be released, to reflect where we should be on the CSSO.
Tom, on this access to information topic at a higher level, we had a document, I think you're familiar with, called the Fair Share document. I believe this council, endorsed among others.
Could you refresh my memory, what is the fair share?
It was 4 principles, we got copies of it here. There was a request for a thermal relief component. There was some other asks in there, and I can give you the.
No, coming back to me.
You might remember now what we're talking about. It's unclear to us, and I know you also wear the RFAC chairman hat as well, and which is, of course, is a committee that we're very interested in the work related to releases and flows. We sent that document to a number of, government agencies, decree parties, and
Right,
governors. And
when I got it,
we
I
sent
forwarded
over,
it
sent
to
it
my
you.
principal, yeah.
Yeah, and it doesn't appear as if we got very far in terms of having it read
Well,
and getting a.
Your comments were, they were heard, and they were moved up chain of command. I mean, I passed mine on to my deputy commissioner. So you have that, you have that.
I mean, other than, individual face-to-face meetings that we might have with you or others.
But that came through RFAC, yeah.
Yeah, we did, I'm not sure we got a formal response in any way. I'm just trying, I guess my question is,
I mean, a lot of things are asked. I'm not clear that said, we expect that just sounds, this is what we want. I mean, there's a lot of wants out there.
is there a forum where we could have more of a formal presence and in front of the people that matter, who make these decisions, where we can speak to our desires and get a response from?
Actually, the principals are looking to hold two RFAC meetings, one mid-basin, one upper basin, and use it as a listening session, where you can express your concerns. I don't think they intended as a question and answer session. I think they're just there. That's my understanding right now.
You're talking about RFAC meetings?
It'd be an RFAC meeting, but the principals are going to come.
Okay. When do you know when? Do you have a schedule?
There is no schedule, but it's probably late summer, September, around there.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Murphy.
you're
30
welcome.
years is a long time not to hear from you all.
Yeah.
We wave at the waters. Yeah, you was here a month ago, yeah.
Yes, you were.
Wave at the waters, it doesn't go by.
Could I ask you something? You said you have basically like a policy decision that you are not responsible for maintaining the health of the main stem?
Well, that's put a little bit differently. We don't feel that that it's advisable for us, and that there's enough water, and we're not in favor of taking on the responsibility of maintaining the main stem. That was never, addressed in earlier negotiations. And I even remember Peter Colasar, when we did away with the thermal targets under the previous Rev 7 and went to the first FFMP, and it was pointed out to him, without the thermal targets, you may have some thermal exceedances. And he said, yeah, I know, it won't be a problem, it's fine. Well, he feels differently now.
Just a follow-up to that, Travis was talking about not having enough water at some point in time, and you've spoken about not having enough water. And the DRBC, as far as we're concerned, does issue dockets for water use to anybody and everybody. And you guys are part of the DR. I'm not clear on the interaction.
We're not part of the DRBC.
You are not?
No,
Okay.
they're not.
Okay. So you guys.
Those guys get votes there.
Yeah.
All right.
The big parties aren't votes.
They take care of everything with the New York City.
They're only an
Board.
advisor to New York State.
Right.
And at the DRBC, then there's the federal commissioner,
Right.
and that's the Corps of Engineers.
Okay.
And they're not a decree party member.
So
That's
they don't
right.
have anything to do with approving the withdrawals of water
No.
out of the system?
No,
Okay,
no, we
thank you.
don't. But, again, just to be clear, our thinking at this time is that we're not in favor of taking on the responsibility for maintaining thermal releases on the main stem.
See, the Basin Commission could allow enough withdrawals to force New York to release more water.
No, we still have the Supreme Court decree.
I don't
Yeah,
think
you have a
so.
certain amount you can
Yeah.
take.
Yeah.
That's what, not what I'm.
There's only so much water to go around. You know, you have the fisheries, you have flood issues.
That's why a
you have water.
filtration system is the solution.
And,
Right there on the Hudson, you got a huge river and plenty of water.
and the other thing is that, you know, as an advisor to New York State, who hasn't voted on the commission, if they had some concern about a discharge, they can go through their commissioner. The National Park Service goes to the federal commissioner. So if there's a concern,
It
you know,
still
that,
comes to the
that's-
DRC that way.
yeah, at that particular point. And another big difference, and that is that Tom mentioned it's unanimous. So it's not a vote because it's all unanimous. That's not true at the commission. It's a majority vote, so it's three out of five.
Thank God it's not all huge and cumbersome, you know?
We are ready for the Delaware River Basin Calm down there.
It was Fred's fault.
It was you. I can hear Fred. It had to be you.
Okay, I'd like to introduce myself. I haven't been here for 2 years, but my name is Tom Fix, and I am the manager of the Modeling, Monitoring, and Assessment branch for the commission. So typically don't deal with the flow-related issues, but more with the water quality side. There's a handout that looks like this, that's Sean. And just wanted to give you some highlights. When I was here in August of 2011, I talked about some of the initiatives. We had some initiatives regarding natural gas. We also have some initiatives regarding special protection waters. So I'll just do briefly update you. If there's any questions, then you can pass them through Cindy or Lori, and I'll respond to them. And I will, you've got some copies, I guess, of press releases, so I won't cover those at this particular point. But just wanted to emphasize on the water quality side that we've got a number of monitoring activities, and it's on the first slide that we implement these special protection water regulations. Some of you are probably very familiar with them. Enacted in 1992, basically set a target of maintaining the existing high quality of the upper, middle, and lower Delaware. In 2005, it was extended all the way down to Trenton. So the Delaware now has the longest stretch of what's called anti-degradation waters. This is very unusual nationwide. It's really something to treasure. I think sometimes we take it for granted. Basically what it means is, for most of the states, you can allow some degradation up to where there's an effect on human health or aquatic life. And those are set by water quality standards. Under the special protection waters, we're protecting to an existing level that is much better than that. So essentially, we're not allowing degradation up to where there could be an effect. These regulations include descriptions of existing water quality that occur in our regulations, and we conduct monitoring to do that. So that was one thing to mention. Regarding special protection waters on the second page, any water withdrawal, any water discharge projects under the commission regulations are required to come in. They have to demonstrate that whatever their activity is, their discharge will not impact or measurably change the existing water quality. What that means is that we can allow a little bit based upon what we've measured in the water, the variability of these various parameters, but we can't go above that. we typically don't get that many direct discharge projects in the main stem upper Delaware River. And these regulations do apply from Hancock on down. But for all the tributaries, they do require that you cannot, where any tributary meets the Delaware, the water quality there cannot be measurably changed. And so we actually do have water quality models. For instance, we've been doing a lot of work the past few years on the Neversink, looking at projects on the Neversink as they affect the Delaware down at Port Jervis before it enters the main stem. So our focus is on the main stem, and that's where we do, lots of our monitoring.
Not to interrupt, I have a question.
No, please
before I
interrupt.
forget.
If you have a
because,
question.
Are you aware of the state of Pennsylvania's proposed regulations on subsurface sewage discharge, the upgrade? And has the commission been asked to comment or send a letter to them regarding their position, your position, as it relates to that?
We don't usually, for a project that had that would be reviewed by our project review, branch. Having said that, our models, do consider that would be considered non-point source runoff, and so we would consider that as part of setting a limit for some project that was directly discharged.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but that was for Pike County, or was it all?
Wayne and
Pike County. No, Wayne and Pike County, so.
Say why?
Because we have
The river,
the most.
concentration of it.
Right. So again, you wouldn't be aware as to whether or not they solicited the commission's opinion on that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
Because we made mention of that at the last UDC meeting, and they said they were gonna look into it.
And I said they hadn't heard of it either. Right.
Yeah, I mean, we
you aware?
we deal with 4 states.
Okay.
So
No,
sometimes
I
they
understand.
things
Are you
slip
aware
on.
of their proposed legislation on that, or rules?
No, I'm not.
Nitrate limitations.
I am not. Now, one of the things, speaking of nitrate, is, these parameters that we're protecting are also basically nutrients, phosphorus, solids. That is highly unusual. Most of or lots of the states don't specifically have even water quality criteria. EPA has a nationwide effort to try to get states to adopt total nitrogen, total phosphorus. And a lot of states do not want to do that because, again, it's at least as complex as the reservoir operations in terms of what would be the appropriate number. We don't have to care about selecting a number that's protected. We're protecting the level of nitrate at these points in the river and at these boundaries, simply because that's the quality that it is. And that's a big jump. It's really significant. And I bring it up just, so we don't forget. There are parties that say that's too stringent, it shouldn't be done. We should change the regulations. So, it's just something to always keep in mind.
Well, their proposed regulations were confiscatory when it came to land use. I mean, it literally just about disallowed you to use your land. Andy's a victim of that. So I'm just curious, if you were aware of that. I don't know whether we have something we could.
I think there's something going through the legislature right now, Pennsylvania, to try to stop it.
Right.
And we would probably, if we looked at it, we would look at it in terms of, impacts on water quality, from some such permits. Particularly if they weren't putting any kind of limits on that particular activity. Now, the other thing we are doing, one final thing on special protection, is that in 1992, when they established those numbers, they were based upon data from prior to 1992. They basically, in our regulations, there's 2 tables. One goes from Port Jervis to Hancock. One goes from essentially Port Jervis down to the water gap. Between 2007 and 2011, for 5 years, we had an intensive sampling program, and we sampled all the tributaries, like 27 tributaries, for points in the upper Delaware alone, middle and lower. We have all that data. We started last year evaluating that data because our intent is, number one, to see whether the quality of the water has changed since 1992. Second of all, to try to move from these average conditions to specific conditions for each tributary and for 7 like main stem points along the river. So that's a big activity for us for the next couple of years, and hopefully when I come back next year or the year after, I can tell you more about it.
Can I ask a question on
Sure.
on the air degradation and the outstanding waters? That is a big deal. That doesn't happen every day. Does that, in terms of non-point source impacts, okay? What kind of authority does DRBC have to weigh in, monitor, watch over, and determine impacts from non-point?
Well, it's one thing to monitor, but under our regulations, a project that comes in, and let's say it's an existing project they want to expand or that, they then are required to submit a non-point source control plan for their entire area, surface area. So if it was a wastewater treatment plant, you know, they would have to do that. And then we would incorporate any monitoring measurements for non-point sources, again, into our model.
And on the impacts, just one more question, on the monitoring, when you're doing the monitoring, are you using any biological criteria? Are you looking at the bugs and the fish and making determinations based on the impact on the biological?
Right now, we do have a biological monitoring program. It was about a 10-year program from 2000. We now cut back, so it's not every year. That biological information is basically used to establish not actual criteria, but a standard against which we assess the data. And we use that when the states are required to list impaired waters, and so they have to compare monitoring data against their standards. We do that for the main stem Delaware River for the states, and so we do use biological data for that. Going back to slide 2, just wanted to mention too, we did have additional monitoring for Didymo, Didymosphenia, otherwise known as rock snot. Page 4 has a picture, and I'll give a PDF so you'll have some of the color on this. But we did get a grant from Pennsylvania Sea Grant after monitoring this down to almost to Trenton last year to continue to do a survey this year and also to do some experiments because it looked like the Didymo was changing its form into a shorter stalk form. So we did start this year looking. This year there wasn't as extensive a Didymo further downriver. I know National Park Service, we do it in conjunction with them. They do further up the upper Delaware reaches, and we cover further down in the below the water gap. So this year wasn't as bad. It definitely is an invasive species, first identified in 2007. So we need to continue to look at that. It is, however, a clean water indicator, and it's present because of the low nutrients. And when it warms up, it retreats. It goes away. But it could be impacting, during the spring, which is a very important season for algae growing on the rocks and the rest of the ecology. And then finally, just to update you on some of our baseline monitoring, the Commission has not taken any action on their natural gas regulations, and we've taken advantage of that delay to continue our monitoring to what we think is a really good baseline in terms of natural gas. We currently have 5 locations in the upper Delaware River where we have these hobo monitors that measure conductivity and temperature, and we're looking at that data. I did include a graph on slide 8. Again, the PDF will have the color. The table there kind of lists, we have one at Delaware River Calicoon, we have it on the Lackawaxen and Dyberry Creek, which is a tributary, Equinunk Creek, Shehawken Creek, Quadra Creek. Again, kind of focused on the Pennsylvania side, but that's where we would expect the initial natural gas development, should it occur. And basically indicates, again, these waters, very high quality. It occurred to me when Tom was speaking about their protection of the watershed. Their protection of the watershed gives us that good water quality. If they had to go to filtration and stop doing what they were doing in their watershed, they might get as good water by treating it. It might be expensive, but the water that's coming down the river is not going to be the quality that it was. So there's a benefit to their watershed protection efforts. One of the things that we'd like to do too is technology now will enable you on your smartphone to get an email that a monitor on a creek just exceeded some kind of set point, anyone that you would want to set. You can do it right now with, it's called, USGS has it, it's called Water Alert. And what we wanted to do was to actually put these conductivity monitors which measure dissolved solids, natural gas, wastewater, and that is very high in dissolved solids, extremely high. And so we are still looking for some funding to install these monitors at USGS gauges, which already have this satellite infrastructure. Because the alternative is to go to cell phone infrastructure for communication, and everybody knows how good the cell phone reception is here. So, you'd have the same problem with the monitors that you have with your voice communication. So, but we think we might be able to work with USGS over the next year to get these 13 gauges done. Moving over to 9, some of the parameters in natural gas wastewater are not the typical things you look for. Strontium, barium, the bromides, and sodium are extremely high in this particular type of wastewater. So what we were interested in was establishing a baseline. What are these levels? So in case there was any release, we could see that it was above background before there was development. We now have 3 years of data on all of these points in the main stem river and at these boundaries. We collected some additional samples, and we also were able to get archive samples. So we now have data for chlorides as well as these other parameters that are listed there. And that's 24 sites just in the upper Delaware alone, middle as well. Next couple of slides kind of show you some example of this information. First one is barium. Barium actually has an MCL, maximum contaminant level in drinking water, of 2 milligrams per liter. If you notice the small type there, typical aqueous concentrations in this frac water, produced water, is around 1,500 milligrams per liter. The data here indicates that those boxes, the line in the middle is the median value. We've got values well less than 0.06, less than 1. So, extremely low levels of barium, and much less than the MCL. The next page shows, this one is for sodium, and you might say, well, why are we interested in sodium? First of all, again, the small type, 27,000 milligrams per liter in natural gas wastewater. Sodium is of concern in drinking water, particularly for people who with heart issues. So typically what they do is they regulate the chloride because they don't normally measure the sodium. But there's concern, even if there was a release, how it might affect downstream drinking water, which is regulating this parameter. As you can see, at these sites in the upper river, that's on the x-axis, we're roughly somewhere between 4 and about 18 for sodium. Down near Philadelphia, our standard is 100. So that's still well lower, much less than the 27,000. So these are just examples, and I'm using much more time. Quickly, two other things is, we did do a study with a research lab. We now can measure the toxicity of a mixture of these chemicals, because typically you control these chemicals individually, and it's really in a mixture. So we were able to get a sample of produced water that was coming. We were able to test it with our standard test species and with mayfly species. So these were both a standard one that they can use, and with ones that were actually collected up in Wayne County. And basically showed that these are very sensitive species. But they could be tested and used if there was ever an event. You can get a water sample, take these, test them with these mayfly species, as well as our standard species. Actually looked about as good as the mayfly species. And finally, we're going to be doing this year, we did get some funding from the William Penn Foundation. We're going to be doing quarterly monitoring for radiological parameters. 33 sites, again, those same sites where we have all these 3 years of data, looking at gross alpha, gross beta, and the 2 radium isotopes. So we've got in summary, for natural gas, we think we have a very good baseline. To see if and when there's any development, occurs. And if nothing does occur next few years, then the data will always be available. And we would continue that conductivity monitoring at least through, for the next few years until some decision occurs.
Question.
Yes.
Does the DRBC have any policy or protocols with respect to treated produced water or treated fracked water back into the river system?
Well, there isn't. I guess within Pennsylvania, there are some wastewater plants that have accepted wastewater.
Yes.
I guess they have a gentleman's agreement not to do that. We do know from the site where we got ours, we actually got our produced water sample from a no discharge facility out in Susquehanna. But they mentioned to us that the sewage treatment plant across the river was taking some. So we know that there are some sewage treatment plants. There aren't any in the Delaware Basin that are permitted to take flowback water. There was one down in Berks County. There was another down just south of Philadelphia who wanted to take it, and there was some testing of it down at a DuPont plant near Delaware. But at this present time, there's no one authorized to take any produced water.
They're using a lot of closed loop systems now.
Are you going to continue the testing? Are you going to continue the sampling?
Well, we have this baseline data under our regulations. And in fact, I guess one of the things that is being looked at is what would the DRBC regulations for natural gas, what would they duplicate versus what would they add? And one of the things that we see is there isn't this monitoring program. We had planned an annual monitoring program. It would be actually over 2 years. We would do 150 sites. Once natural gas, was authorized. So if it never gets authorized, we will scale back this program.
We'll scale back the program.
And we're still gonna do ours,
And
and we've been working with them. 2 of them, I believe, are gonna leave in, and we're gonna take on the monitoring of the signs on those 2 sites.
And in fact,
Up at the east and west fork, I think, right where they come in, is those 2 sites that are going north.
and plus you
And
have
USGS.
USGS monitors. They have the more sophisticated monitors that do more parameters, but it's really the conductivity, I think, is what people are very interested in. But you've got some mobile ones, and there's also been fixed ones installed. Port Jervis? Remember working at Montague?
The Lackawaxen Bridge, just upstream.
Lackawaxen, okay.
And where's the other one? It's up the street.
Lordville,
Lordville, yeah. Lordville
Right.
and the bridge on the Lackawaxen.
Right. So So we'd like to get this, and those are real time, so, and you can get them through communication. But that would be the way, you would know whether there was some kind of a
That
release.
would trigger an
No.
investigation.
Because these hobos, we go once a month and we download the data, so we can tell you something happened, and when it happened, but it could have been 3 weeks, 2 weeks earlier.
May I ask you a question?
Sure.
You said there are no plants currently permitted to take on wastewater from fracking operations in the basin. Is that correct?
To accept produced or flowback water. Right.
Does that also mean that, well, does that carry over to the point of DRBC policy about such a plant being constructed?
Well, the plant we got our sample from was actually constructed to be a no discharge facility, and that's what they were doing. They were treating this wastewater. The issue really is, right now, they can recycle this water and use it for more fracking.
Right.
The problem is, once they don't have as many wells to frack, this water has to be gotten rid of somehow. So they've either got to build treatment facilities, or it's got to be,
So
go to
my
a treatment
question is,
facility.
What is the commission's policy in terms of the eventuality of a plant treatment system?
Under our regulations that are proposed, we haven't adopted, there are wastewater requirements. We currently would look at the standards that we have. We don't have as stringent standards in the upper river as we have down in the estuary. We think we probably could get some control on it in the estuary. But if these regulations were adopted as is, they would require treatability studies before a plant would be authorized to accept it. They'd have to demonstrate that the mixture wouldn't impact aquatic life, that it wouldn't violate any of the primary drinking water standards in their discharge. So there's a portion of our regulations that specifically deals with wastewater facilities that would treat this.
Pennsylvania has one, I believe, that can reduce it to distilled water, and with 2 more coming online.
Yeah, they, reverse osmosis.
Reverse osmosis.
Then there's issues with the waste as well.
Yeah, but it's a solid waste. It becomes a solid waste rather than liquid.
Becomes a waste.
It's easier to handle.
Where does it go, do you know?
Depends. The injection, the class 2 EPA injection wells, most of them, they take it out to Ohio right now.
Yeah,
But there are some in West
or
Virginia.
landfills can take.
There will be none in New York in this area. The geology is not suitable.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
New York State Department Environmental Conservation.
Well, considering the hour of the night, I'm gonna rely on Cindy's handout that's in your packet for my report.
Come on.
Good
job.
You want me to extend this meeting?
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
But none of them you talked to, they're not even here to decline. National Park Service.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The one night that we're late, I've got like all kinds of handouts and charts for us to look at and stuff. No, I'm okay. There's a couple here, but just quickly, I attended a meeting with Representative Sullivan County, Delaware County, for Congressman Chris Gibson last Tuesday. Met with Christine Schiff and Paula Brown, and just talked about the river issues and the National Park Service and our role in the valley, and to gain their support or their understanding, just more of a meet and greet. And I gave them recovery funds, about $500,000 project. They put in an overlook on the river. They converted an old bridge abutment, overgrown weeds, into this beautiful overlook that connects to a kind of a fitness trail throughout the town. And they celebrated that this is kind of the gateway to the upper Delaware. And so it was a nice event. Anybody gets a chance to pull in there and see that. They did a really, really nice job.
What is that, on East Branch?
Yeah, it's right by
there
the old
by
bridge, the old railroad bridge. Yeah, it's really nice. And it was an opportunity to talk about, the beginning, of revitalizing some of the towns on the waterfront and connecting. So it was a neat event. And then we also had, last week, we had a meeting with the commercial use folks for us, the Park Service, the fishing guides up in Hancock. We met with them and went through a lot of issues that they're dealing with us, things that we can help them with. They talked about water flow, and I told them they should come here tonight. We talked about combustible motorized vehicles that are starting to have a conflict with fishermen up in the upper part of the river. The need for more law enforcement presence up in that area. There's some break-ins on some of the accesses in Long Eddy, and of course some of the illegal guiding that's going on, and our ability to try and help them out to try and stop the illegal guiding. So and we talk, a lot of talk about the accesses and the condition of the accesses, working with DEC and the waterfront plan and so that stuff. So that was a good meeting. We meet with them every year to talk about their concerns, because they operate under a permit from us. So it was a nice meeting. It was about 12 guides were there. And then in the packet, I also included the latest of the visitor statistics. And we put together the statistics come out in a book like this, and it's got every single unit, the 300, almost 400 units in the Park Service, all the numbers. And all I did was extrapolate those numbers for you. And so they're in here with a description. You guys can get a chance to look at them. One of the things that I didn't understand what it was, so I called up the guy in Denver today, is when it talks about recreation visits and visitor days. Like, what's a visitor day? A visitor day is described as a person being in the park for 12 hours, but that isn't actually what it is. It's basically looks at the amount of time a person is actually in a park unit. So for the Upper Delaware, it comes out to 42,265, which if you multiply times 12, really comes out to almost 600,000 hours that visitors are using facilities, bathrooms, roads, access points, museums. So it just gives you an idea of the wear and the tear, the impacts that is happening to facilities and for use, conflicts. So it just gives you a number about the kind of use, other than just the numbers of people that we count, which is that first number. So that's for your information.
It seemed like the visitors went down, right?
Yeah, they did. Yeah. And then also in here, which I was surprised, there's a forecast for 2013 and 2014. And so if you look at the Upper Delaware, the forecast is for 2013, it increased by 2.3%. And this is based on the records going back, and they take 5 years, and they have a model. And for 2014, they're predicting a 1.7% decrease. And so what I did was put in other wild and scenic rivers that are managed by the Park Service, so you get a comparison of what's happening. And we're about the same as all the other rivers, 4 out of the 7. Any questions on it? I also asked them if it's possible for them to help us as a valley, working with the scenic byway folks and with communities. There was a question about whether we can get better numbers of people coming in the entire Pennsylvania, New York, and get an idea that's coming to the Upper Delaware. And he said he could. The caveat is he could put this together, but it has to be done. It has to continue to be done. So that means towns or someone has to take on making sure counters are working, numbers are being put into the system. So it can't just be, this was great for a year, or this was great for a few months, and then it gets dropped, which, so we have to agree that we're gonna do this, and we're gonna do it in a scientific way. So we're gonna continue to pursue that, because that's been a big interest by a lot, the visitors bureaus, the towns, the counties. Everybody's been asking, how many people actually come to the Upper Delaware for recreation and for use? So we'll continue working on that. Any questions on that? No? And then I just put in here a letter of appreciation that I just have to do this. I got this myself from a school teacher from the 5th grade of the Sullivan West School. And just a really nice, you can read it, but just a nice letter for the park rangers that are going out there. And and educating and getting involved in school programs. And so it was nice to hear back how important it was for what the Rangers have done for the students. In the last paragraph, we are fortunate to live in an area with tremendous amount of community support, which is so important to the lives of our young students. You not only help us in raising trout, but in raising children. Those things mean a lot to me, and the programs that the Interpreter Rangers do, they're doing every day now, from now to the end of the summer. Another issue that came up with Jack brought up, and then there was a discussion here in the council, was the oral history tapes that were done. And so, as you requested, I went back and did research, and in your packet, I put a briefing statement. This is first stab at it. I need to tweak this a little bit more, but here's the basic information. We have the 133 oral tapes, 28 interviews have no signed release. So in other words, 28 of those tapes cannot be used for public use because the person that was interviewed didn't sign a release. So it's really like you want to grab somebody and smack them. You know, why didn't you do that? But it's done. I can't go back and do that. But if we're going to get in touch with family members to see if there's a family member that will agree to release the information.
They're not deceased, or they are deceased?
No, they're deceased, yes.
They're deceased, oh,
Yeah.
What are they gonna do?
Yeah.
Take away your birthday? I mean.
Well, it's a policy. I mean, it's a policy. We can't use something
But
that
if there
didn't
is a
use.
family member.
But if there's a family member that can do also.
I'll just give it to the Justice Department, they'll take care of it.
Well, you'll have to compile a list of those that are,
You'll go out, okay.
well, I know one I'll go,
Okay.
after she was 100 years old, and she gave about 5 of those tapes.
Okay. And then the question was, that I didn't know the answer to, was the condition of the tapes, and the tapes are in good condition. They're all stored in the museum curation up at headquarters. And then the copies are in Zane Gray with, Dorothy Moon has those. So the copies are in good shape, but the originals are in really good shape and are stored, so that was good news. So, and then lastly, I put in there, you know, basically funding is the issue to get the rest of those transcribed so that we can use them for public use.
It seems to me that if somebody spends a half an hour talking to you with a tape recorder running, they've given their permission. And is this something that could be
Come on,
appealed to the
George,
court?
that's too much common sense.
Yeah, I had the same question, George, and I need also to find out where that policy is written. I've asked Dr. Moon to say, show me the policy.
Well, that's a starting point, but then
Right.
to whom can a
Right.
foolish policy be appealed? I mean, it seems like it's ridiculous.
Right.
And I think we can assume that people who are dead, that went through the process of spending this kind of time, intended
You would
for it to
think.
be preserved.
Right.
Well, it's like you look at Maryland, you can't record anybody without their permission.
It's perfectly legal.
I don't see where it's illegal in New York.
Trademark, that's
So
all.
I'm getting this advice from our professional curator, so I will follow up. Yeah. All right, any questions on that? I mean, it's good news that these tapes are in good shape right now, so.
Is the plan to digitize those tapes? Is there any plan to do that at this point?
No,
So they still remain vulnerable, more vulnerable, I would
they
say.
still, we just don't have the money to do it, or the persons to do it. So that was something we talked about. Could we get some help to do this? The libraries might help, you know. We'll hand somebody a box of these tapes if we can work together to get a program going. And we plan to do that.
Real quick, what is your expert tell you the life expectancy of these tapes are?
Didn't have an answer for that.
That's something that you might want to find out more so than whether or not you can use the recorded tapes, because you say they're in good shape. How do you know that?
Well,
You looked at them?
Yeah,
Somebody
yeah,
can zap
yeah,
them
you
with
look
a
at them
bat.
every year.
In other words,
Right.
how do you judge the quality of a tape? No one's played them? Or they just say, oh, they look good, they're still there?
Yeah, I think that's what they do, they look good, but no, I mean, they're in these like sealed boxes in this air-conditioned room, I mean, You know, I mean, they're not like stuck in your glove box, you know, 68 Chevy.
You know what I'm saying, is the one time you have the money and you go, oops, should have checked that.
No, I'm following up on this, one step at a time here, so
You're doing
so
a
the
good
tapes are good, and we'll follow up, and we'll work and see if we can't figure out a way to get these transcribed. So,
It would seem to me the Park Service has an obligation to preserve them.
Well, that's what we're doing.
Working on it.
Yeah. You know, they're preserved, but for how long is the question?
Well, they preserved in a usable manner.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't there money provided for people to teach people how to take these oral histories in the future? I mean, I read about that. Is that ongoing now?
No.
It was. I read about it somewhere.
In our
within the last
newsletter,
year.
there's a program that the library sponsors
Yeah, the library
to
one.
do that.
Moses brought them down off the mountain. They were up
It's
there.
just not in our program right now to do that, you know.
I knew somebody was doing it.
I mean, if someone gives me some money, I'd love to do it, but.
Well, maybe that
One less-
program could be switched over from that to doing something that's already there.
Yeah.
You know, we don't need more tapes, we need more
Go ahead,
people
I'll
reading
back
the
you
tapes we got.
Well, we need to transcribe and then make them public, and, put them in the library. That's what we need to do.
There's also the Delaware Valley Arts Alliance, I'm remembering grants for programs that benefited the community, an art project or an oral history project. If it benefited the community, the key to getting the grant was that. So I would picture this stuff as being wonderful and having a slide thing going on and the voice going on and being in the visitor center and people able to listen to these voices. Why should they not be able to hear them, right? I mean, that's what I mean.
I have a quick question. Just on these tapes, Sean, are they on magnetic tape? Is that it, basically? And you just have one version of each of these 28 people
There's-
on magnetic
The
tape?
originals are in curation, and the copies are down, the ones that we can use, that we'll use.
So my suggestion is, you live in a digital age again, why don't you just copy this onto an MP3 file and it can be done with no cost whatsoever? You know,
I
come on.
mean, well, I don't have the time to do it. Dot doesn't have the time to do it. It's just, we don't have someone to go do that right now. We don't have the staff.
So get a volunteer.
From the historical.
It's, what, to play an MP3 player, to record it? I mean, that would take, how many hours are we talking about? Look, you made a very good point. Something happens to those originals, everybody's gonna be very sorry that there wasn't a backup or a duplicate.
I'm working on it.
We had a group of interviews that were done in Shahola area, and the Historical Society actually gave them to a couple of people who said, yeah, I'll listen to it and type it up for you, and we put it into a book, which is, it's another way of preserving, plus saving the tapes. And I think this is something that's, before they get lost forever, and too many historical documents
It
have.
should have been transcribed right away, so the person that actually did the interview could then recall and make sure that everything was done and understand what we were saying, but that didn't happen. So, all right, we'll move on. Then the last thing I have in here is just that the Rangers are doing a hike on the Mongaw River Trail on June 15th at 10:30. For anybody who's interested, it's 2-mile linear trail, moderate hike, eagles, wildlife, waterfowl, large eastern hemlock trees, probably on your property. Hike through steep ravine landscape. So that's the part of the Take a Hike program.
Is there a trail there?
Yeah, on both sides actually.
Marked trail or no?
Yeah, it's about 2 miles long. What?
It's not marked.
It's not, no, it's marked.
Yeah, I mean, you can follow it, but it's not.
On the far side?
Yeah, they're over.
I don't know if
It's
it's
not.
They follow.
There's a trailhead there.
Right.
You shoot
Yeah, but I don't think it's marked.
Oh, okay.
I've been on it many times.
While being fixed and chasing them back.
EDC Executive Director's Report.
Thank you to our guests and alternates and media for coming tonight, and we appreciate your patience in sitting through a longer than usual meeting, but I think that some positive contributions came out of it to get the New York City DEP here, so we appreciate that. I have a minor expenditure request every year, starting with last year when we bought a flower barrel outside the Narrowsburg Beautification Group. purchases the flowers and takes care of the maintenance of it. Right now, it's an empty barrel of dirt. So they would like permission from the board to spend $35 to $40. They anticipate to fill that flower pot.
Oh my
And
God.
they have this as part of their Sullivan Renaissance competition of beautification throughout the town. So may I
Maybe
go
get
ahead
some
and tell them
perennials.
to buy flowers?
I'll make the motion, 35.
Please, just do it.
Well, I thought you'd want to have permission. Okay, a couple follow-up from operations. It was mentioned about Westfall Township and the extended lack of representation for 6 months that we haven't had an appointed representative. I did reach out on May 30th with our offer to assist in that search, however we could possibly facilitate that, and or to discuss what UDC service is about with any prospective candidates that they do have. I haven't heard back about that yet, but the wheels are in motion that we have made the offer, and also explain what the benefits are of active membership, such as, the Westfall Township has received over $47,000 worth of technical assistance grants since 1988, and just the having a seat at the table being the primary benefit for the advocacy role. Secondly, it was mentioned about the adjacent property and the retail establishment that's proposed there. We will be in attendance at the Town of Tustin Planning Board public hearing on the 17th, or is that town board hearing? Or
It's a public hearing for the planning board.
Planning board. And we have subsequently seen the site plan for it, and the plan is to have parking in the rear of the building, but as we know, human nature is such that people will see our lovely paved lot and park there instead. So we'll certainly be there on the 17th to represent the UDC's position and are concerned about the impacts it could have on our parking situation, which is already tight, as we know, and encroached upon, as we also know. So we will do our best, but the site plan does, Travis reviewed the zoning ordinance, and it looks like they would certainly be in compliance with what they have planned. So all we can do is stress the enforcement of it. But we'll report back to you on what
Well, you
happens
can always
with
put
that.
signs up, basically like every place else does, for customers,
We do have
whatever
signs.
only.
Signs out
But,
there.
it's whether the signs are acted on. It was mentioned earlier about our request to Norcross Wildlife Foundation. We had requested $2,500 to buy computer equipment and audio visuals, such as, instead of borrowing from the Park Service for the PowerPoint projector, we would like to have our own. Unfortunately, on Monday, we were notified that our grant was not awarded. We were basically advised that they had a lot of applications from nonprofits for similar projects, and simply that they were not eliminated from future consideration, so we're welcome to apply again in the future. This is the same organization that had given us a grant last year for computer equipment, so we'll try again at another time, but in the meantime, we will discuss our computer needs at operations this month and put together a proposal for what we had in mind purchasing that could potentially be done with any surplus that we might have at the end of the fiscal year. Another note on grants is that we've opened up applications for our technical assistance grants for 2014. We put out a news release, and you have that in your packets, that applications are being accepted through August 30th. We have a funding pool of $30,000 in our budget set aside for that, and it is competitive. And Travis also,
You have to award all $30,000 of that?
no, that's
Why
what
don't
we
you
do
take
that
the,
budget.
why don't you take some of the money and go buy the equipment that you need?
But
I'll make a
because
motion to
it's
do
a
that.
great benefit to our member towns and townships that we pass through
No,
this
no.
funding.
Having that's important
Right.
because it really makes the meetings and people who come and put on shows can really communicate. That $2,500 is far more important than spreading.
But unfortunately, you gotta look at the grants that they give you and look at what the towns have and figure out how much you're actually gonna give to the towns before you can even talk about something like this. Because that precludes that you're gonna use that grant money to buy something what's not intended for.
Well,
I do anticipate we'll have the
Operations already
funding
has
available
budget.
to purchase that equipment and to still give out the $30,000.
So you think you're gonna
Um,
have the money?
90%.
Well, the intent is to use up the whole thing, but that's not necessarily true.
It's
But
ridiculous.
you can't sit there and say, we're gonna take X amount of dollars out of that. to buy
It's
it.
absurd, you know?
That defeats the purpose of the grant.
You need the money, take the money.
Travis updated the forms and guidelines on our website, so anyone interested in seeing the criteria for tags can go online and find that. And then we, of course, can give you paper copies if you'd rather have it that way. The current tag projects for 2013 have to be completed by July 26th, very firm date. And 8 out of the 9 projects are outstanding at this time. And just so that you know, so that you can take the information back, that includes tags by Deer Park, Tustin, Damascus, Coshocton, Lumberland, Part 2 of Delaware, they finished one part, Fremont, and Sullivan County. So the municipality that has completed and had their project paid is Pike County. So I'm sure everybody else is working on them, but if you want to prod them along with that July 26th date, it would be helpful. Our 5K run walk was mentioned earlier. We've also opened up registration for that event, which will be on September 28th. And there is a news release that you have in your packets, as well as the registration form, which is basically a sponsorship drive. And we've indicated that there are a number of needs we have in terms of donations of goods, services, raffle prizes, and we'll always accept money, of course. And the options for sponsorship are listed there, along with correlating benefits for various levels of giving. The benefits would include the ability to include coupons in a gift bag, promotional items, also to be listed on the commemorative t-shirt in various prominent placements. So you have this available to you to read, and if you have any ideas for us, Cindy did a direct mailing to over 100 businesses that were on our map and guide publication, as well as some targeted businesses which we know offer the services that are on our wish list. So we're hoping that bears some fruit. And then I did a general press release to catch the rest of the population. Individuals are also included in those sponsorships in addition to businesses. So if anybody is having a warm and fuzzy feeling toward this 5K run, you can be involved. Very quickly, there's a press release from the DRBC that is in regards to the Delaware River Sojourn, the 19th annual. It kicks off on June 22nd, and I attached for you the day plans for the first 3 days, which pertain to the Upper Delaware section. On day 1, Saturday, June 22nd, I'll be giving a program during the kickoff about our 25th anniversary. They asked for that, and we're happy to provide that to that audience. There are 2 new publications out that either are by or feature a couple of our UDC alternates, so I wanted to mention those. The first one is George Fleur has this new book, which is the Shohola Civil War Train Wreck, the Great Prison Train Disaster in Pike County, Pennsylvania. This was done in anticipation of 2014 being the sesquicentennial of this event. And also, it's $15 and all proceeds benefit the Shohola Railroad and Historical Society. And I'm sure George can give more information on how you can obtain a copy. This year, the ceremony for this commemoration will be July 14th at 1 o'clock at the Old Berryville Congregational Church. So if anybody's interested in that, he gifted the UDC with this copy for our resource library, and it's even autographed. Secondly, Tony Ritter was featured in this publication, June 2013 issue of Cabela's, I might always mispronounce that, Outfitter Journal. This is an article that was done on fishing the West Branch of the Delaware River. This is not him, no, he's not pictured, but he is heavily quoted. It's a 2-page article, and also lists his phone number and website address, so I hope you get a lot of good contacts out of this. He also provided us with this copy for our resource files too, so if anybody would like to read it or see it, we'll make that available to you. And lastly, you have the usual monthly calendar for June of our meetings, activities, and deadlines. And if you look that over and have any questions about anything that we're going to, there are also staff assignments listed there, as well as some notes about July activities coming up and various deadlines, including that July 10th is the date by which we need to submit all of our funding applications to the National Park Service for FY 2014, which is why we're doing all our budgets and work plans tonight, because this full council will not meet again until July 11th because of the July 4th holiday being on the first Thursday. So keep that in mind for your calendars as well.
Since Lori mentioned my name, if you haven't looked at your calendar, on June 9th, it says Lori's 1-year anniversary as executive director.
All right. How about that?
Did you bake the cake?
It's not July 9th until Sunday.
I'm not gonna ask Alan that standard question, I should
I'm gonna say quick goodnight. I'm sorry to leave.
Good night, Bill.
Good night, Bill. Thank you for coming.
Any old business?
For those deer, I will.
I'd like to talk to you about that. Okay, moving into new business, we have a whole raft of resolutions to get through.
They're quick.
So we're just gonna start with 2013-08.
Which you will not act on because this is notification for the July meeting, given that the bylaws require 30
No
days
action
advance
required
notice.
today.
No action required.
Okay.
2013-09 is to adopt the budget.
I can move it.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the budget? Call
The
for-
budget was distributed in advance and gone through by the committees, just for the record.
Call for vote?
Aye. Aye.
Motion's carried. Resolution 2013-10 to adopt the work plan, not the 2014 work plan for the Water Use Resource Management Committee.
Can we incorporate all these into one motion?
Yes.
I move that we
Yeah.
approve them all.
2013, 10, 11, and 12, that's the motion, I'll second it.
Any discussion? Call for a vote on the motion. Aye. Okay, going from there, is there a motion to adopt 10, 11, and 12? No, that was a motion to do this. This is the motion to actually pass it.
Yes.
Second.
Okay, call for a vote?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Well, that was quick.
Public comment?
We're really on a roll now.
You're exhausted.
Okay, I need a motion to go into executive session.
For what purpose?
Personnel.
Personnel.
Yeah, I'll move to go in executive session.
I move it.
Okay. We'll go to executive session, so. Pardon? We have to return, we're not gonna stay here the rest of the day. And we don't know, we haven't discussed the items to be discussed.
I don't believe there's gonna be a vote.
Probably not. It may be just information. The council was on executive session. Oh. Right, the council has returned from executive session where we discussed an issue brought forth from personnel.
I make the motion, we accept what the
You need a
executive
motion.
personnel committee.
Okay, we did that in executive session, so we have to have it now.
Well, we didn't record what
Oh.
time you came out of executive session.
All right, so there's a motion to come out of executive session.
Motion so made.
Second,
Second.
call for a vote.
Aye.
Motion's carried. In executive session, the council was discussing information from the personnel committee.
I move that we accept the recommendations of the personnel committee.
I'll second.
And I think we should should clarify for the public what it is.
What
We're
it is.
talking about a raise for 2 employees and a contractual increase for Travis, the third, and that's that. That's what the motion is about, salaries.
Second discussion.
So, we've already made a motion?
Is there a motion?
Yeah, there's a motion.
Second.
Second.
Yeah.
Any discussion?
You don't listen to that.
Call for a vote.
Aye.
Motion's carried.
Motion to
Is there a motion to adjourn?
Aye.
Is there a second?
So this is a three beer next rainy day.
Please.
George will be there signing autographs.
Oh, I have to sign something, right?
That results in the.
Except for one of them.